This is Jonathan Ferguson, the Keeper of Firearms and Artillery at the Royal Armouries Museum in the UK, which houses a collection of thousands of iconic weapons from throughout history. Today, he's joining us to break down some of the weapons of Special Forces shooter Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Breakpoint.
Now, while I'm trying to ignore what you've done to that Vector, I am pleased to announce we have not one, but two Kriss Vectors.
If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to like the video, subscribe, and let us know in the comments what games or guns you'd like to see on the show. But without further ado, it's over to Jonathan.
Ah, yes. SA-80, specifically L86. Specifically L86A2.
I should explain, while the game is in third person, I installed a mod that would allow me to view some of the guns and the gunplay in first person. So we'll get a better look at some of the reload animations and the handling, but they were never specifically designed to be seen so up close.
Okay. There's a lot of recoil, like the first person view especially is insane amounts of recoil. This is a very heavy gun. That's why they used to give it to recruits. They called it the crow cannon, because crow is British Army slang for a recruit. It's hefty, and it's 5.56, so it doesn't recoil like that. It's much less visible in third person though, so I think that's probably a result of first person mod. Weirdly, but not for the first time, we have the outrigger structure here, the big girder under the barrel, but no bipod attached at the front. Then you've got all this extra weight up front for no reason. The early prototypes that we have from the 70s actually did not have that. They had the bipod attaching back here, and there was no great big outrigger thing. This whole arrangement caused no end of problems with accuracy with the LSW light support weapon. You'd fire a burst and it would end up split at a given distance, and that was never solved. One of the reasons why this weapon was never very successful. The model is pretty good. Like, all the major design features are there. Unlike a lot of the other SA-80s I've seen, I don't see anything glaringly wrong. The overall green finish is the most wrong thing about it. It's almost like they've taken the green of the furniture, or the handguard up here, which if I remember my own book correctly, is NATO green. This one, although it's been upgraded to A2 standard, which you can see from the cocking handle, which is correctly on the Breakpoint gun, making it an A2. The pistol grip and rear grip have deteriorated to this weird frosted light grey, greyish green color, almost like a slate. And that's probably just aging polymer. We're going to find out over the next century or so how well these modern polymers on firearms actually hold up. And it looks like this one is getting ahead of the game.
When you unlock a weapon, by default, it's just black. I put some of the green on it to make it look... That's about as close as I could make it look to what the weapon actually looks like.
Maybe I did have this when I played Breakpoint, and I just left it all black. I remember grumbling to myself about the gun being all black, now that you mention it. So is it better to make it all green? Probably. The rail under this SUSAT sight, you can just see the little bit poking out. That is the original NATO standard rail. Spain and the UK are, I think, probably the only countries that actually adopted it, even though it's a NATO standard. And it's this dovetail style rail without the distinctive stops of the Weaver system or of the Picatinny rail. That's a Picatinny rail, and it's attached directly to the upper receiver, which for A2s was never a thing. So the only SA-80 with a directly welded on Picatinny rail on the upper is the A3. And there is no A3 L86. In fact, I've been waiting for a game to include an A3 L86 so I can go, that's wrong. No, not really. But if they did, it would be. So is there an option for a bipod? I can't remember.
The bipods just add a flat stat change.
Okay.
So it'd just be, you wouldn't be able to see it deploy or anything in Breakpoint.
The fact it's not there implies that it's something you can quick detach. It's definitely not the case. There's a roll pin that you'd have to punch out before you can remove the bipod off the end of that spigot. And as I say, you'd be better off semi-free floating the barrel by cutting away the infamous girder on the front. Okay, well that's the extremely cool sci-fi looking Maxim 9 from SilencerCo, designed around a modular suppressor that you can add sections to. Makes it really very quiet, or a bit less quiet, but more compact. And I'm surprised I haven't seen that more in movies, because it's just very futuristic. And not just for the sake of looking different as well. This does bring something new in theory. Whether there's a practical military purpose to that, I don't know. I'm not the right person to judge that. An imaginary unit like these guys, you can see them, as special operations forces traditionally have done, taking out things that are somewhat experimental and a bit different and using them in the real world. Clearly very quiet.
This is probably the most sort of Sam Fisher I felt while playing Breakpoint.
Well, I mean, if we were doing a reboot of Splinter Cell, or even just a new Splinter Cell game, to me it makes sense that this would be the new primary. The classic thing with a decently capacious suppressor is that it makes the thing very long relative to the normal length of a pistol. By giving you volume in the vertical plane, as it were, down to the level of the trigger guard, you can make your suppressor much shorter overall. It's kind of surprising that someone didn't think of that before. It does make it bulky, of course, but it makes it much shorter, which I think is what matters. What is that?
Well, in game, it's called Silver Stake Tactical, but it's based, from what I could see, on the Magpul Masood.
The Magpul designed the Masada, which became the ACR, which has had quite the life in fiction. It hasn't really seen any significant adoption as a real rifle. They did then go back and do a sort of DMR battle rifle, which I think is what this is. It's a little bit like the battlefield problem of they're trying to anticipate what might become significant in the future. I think we could have told them that the Masood was already not a thing and probably wouldn't be in 2025.
One detail that I thought you'd appreciate is the weapons will get wear and tear the longer you use them. When you're crawling through mud or running through the jungle, there'll be wear and tear to the edges, but you can reset it so it looks all shiny and new. But it does at least somewhat represent how a weapon is getting banged about and weathered while it's out in the field.
Yeah, I remember that. I did appreciate it. Not only does it look authentically battle worn, but it's from your battles that it's become worn, and that is cool. Oh, okay. FRF2?
Nailed it.
Another thing we don't have, unfortunately. We have the FRF1. So the FRF2 is the modernized French Army sniper rifle standard. There's a very good video on Forgotten Weapons about it. It looks quite Fallout in some ways, but it's an interesting mix of traditional bolt-action rifle with wood still on there, and that very unusual barrel shroud, which is designed to help with heating. It almost looks retro-futuristic to me, I suppose is what I'm getting at. But it's a conventional bolt-action precision rifle, still in use, for I don't know, by the French military. It's a different sort of design philosophy to, it's not the traditional one-piece wooden stock thing. It's not the fiberglass bedded barreled action thing of a later American sniper rifle, say. And it's not the Accuracy International aluminium chassis with plastic cladding on it, essentially. It's kind of its own thing, which is cool. It has that air of tradition about it. Okay, of course, the ability to shoot from the left shoulder. So very important tactically, something that is done in real life, obviously, and a nice gameplay element to bring into this game. Introduces a slight problem with this bolt-action sniper rifle because you're doing the Ian McCollum, well, no, not quite. But you're operating the bolt with the right hand. This guy's keeping it laser focused on target and just, I don't know, he must have a lot of forearm and wrist muscles there to really keep it in place. But overall, it's well worth that minor eyebrow raise, because being able to swap shoulders for shooting around cover is just a good thing for a tactical game generally. So this is the Hera Arms furniture set. That's very big, chunky P90 style foregrip and thumbhole stock. You might have seen it in the Tomorrow War where it's a very shorthand way of saying it's the future. All that fancy furniture has distracted me from the fact that this is actually technically not an AR-15 per se. It is in fact, as it says on the receiver on the side, a 416 or a 416. Now the real thing, of course, says HK 416. It's white on beige, so it's a little hard to see. This has been modified, is the most polite way I can put it, which is in theory possible. So this is a 416A5, which is still the current baseline model from HK, although they are up to A8 in terms of optional variants, but the A5 is still the default. So there are two things we need to deal with here. Firstly, that Hero Arms set of furniture, yeah, it's generic to any AR-15 derivative. You could fit it to most of them. I actually think you would struggle with the 416A5 because it has this extended castle nut here, and I don't think that funny buttstock would fit. Underneath that is a sort of 416, and you can tell that if it didn't say 416 on the side. This is the A5 receiver set. We have this shrouded left side bolt release paddle, this style of ambidextrous magazine catch, this curved shape of trigger guard, although that's on lots of ARs as well. Notably, that bulge there is rounded. That's distinctive to the HK 416 series. The A5 goes back to the AR-15 angled magazine well, which is correctly depicted on this game version as well. The old 416s had a much straighter mag well. Not quite clear on which variant this one is supposed to be, but to be honest with you, the 416 variants are pretty confusing. I've got a fairly definitive list of them now, but it's taken a bit of effort to compile that. But this is an excellent excuse to show off one of our new acquisitions, which is this HK 416 A5, which is one of the trial guns for something quite exciting, which we hope to show you soon.
I got all of them. Well done.
Oh, Desert Tech SRS? Yeah, so my instinct when this popped up was Desert Tech SRS. That's the ordinary size. This is the HTI, which is the big boy. It's the big brother. And I should have noticed from how deep the magazine is that this thing is, 50 cal, which is what it is. You wouldn't typically see a bullpup configuration precision rifle, partly because although you can engineer it to have a decent trigger pull, why would you bother when you can just go for a gun that's quarter again as long and just deal with it because you're a mile away or whatever it is. If you do have to maneuver in and out of a vehicle to get to where you're going, there's a lot of helicoptering around in this game. In theory, a shorter weapon would help with that, and then you can use the sort of space you've bought yourself and put a suppressor on the end of it. Good example there of an anti-materiel role. Admittedly, something as precision as a Desert Tech, you call it a sniper rifle. But I believe HTI stands for hard target interdiction. So it is more on the anti-materiel side. And we just saw that getting clobbered with big bullets, which is what anti-materiel rifles are for. Materiel being French-derived term for military hardware. Oh, good lord. That's very long for a Kriss Vector. I know some of the civilian semi-autos can end up looking that long because they need a 16-inch barrel, and they look a bit weird if you don't have a rail system to cover some of that. This is select fire. This is a military style operation, so there's something a little bit wrong about having it that long.
Well, if it was any shorter, I couldn't get the grenade launcher on.
Yeah. Elephant in the room. You've got a 203 on a Kriss Vector, which I can't really complain about because of half-life.
That's very true.
Very strong argument that a grenade launcher on a 9mm submachine gun makes not much sense, and probably an even stronger argument with 45 with its ballistically less effective, longer range trajectory. Probably not significant, really. But now, while I'm trying to ignore what you've done to that Vector, I am pleased to announce that thanks to your contact with Kriss and the very hard work of my colleague Eric, who knows who he is, we have not one, but two Kriss Vectors. Hooray! And one of them is the same color as this one. It's just a lot shorter with one of Kriss's designs of buttstock, and then this even shorter version in that it doesn't have the extending handguard rail system on the bottom here, has the AR buffer tube style stock system. So that's just extend, retract, and it doesn't pivot. So the shortest you can make this is that, which is still very, very short. One of the advantages of this weapon course. These are both in 45, by the way, which seems to be the chosen. Well, so I think it's what it was designed for originally. And this one has the ability to both slide and fold alongside. So you can go full sci-fi action movie, and they even supplied these with shield red dot sights on them. This is like a future Tommy gun. It's in 45 ACP, high rate of fire, and it has separated safety and fire selector, just like a Tommy gun. Thank you, everybody that made that happen. We would not have 2 Kriss Vectors without the Expert Reacts series, and without you, Dave. So thank you.
If you can let me shoot it, I'll call it even.
As far as how the game represents the Vector, I think it does a good job. I think it captures that sort of recoil mitigation thing that the Vector is all about. Where this thing really shines, and I remember it being really good in the game as well, and I've just seen that proven, on 2-round burst. You get a very high rate 2-round burst. It controls the recoil for you with this V-shaped bolt. We will absolutely, once people have forgotten that we have them, so that we can try and do our social media guessing game thing, I will absolutely be covering the Vector over on the Armouries. We won't be the first by any means, but we'll strip it down and try to explain what it's trying to do. Very rare to see some sort of innovation in firearms, and Kriss definitely achieved that with the Vector. The main users of this thing have been police. So US SWAT teams, some of them have adopted it, other police security forces around the world. I think it's safe to say that it's where it really shines is in popular culture, actually. So we see it more frequently in movies and video games. It's extremely cool looking. Right, HK, another HK, although of course won't be branded as such, actually says on here MG121. That is the actual Bundeswehr designation for the MG5. It's a 7.62 NATO general purpose machine gun based on the MG4, which was the 5.56 light machine gun belt fed that HK developed that we do have. Back when it was still called the MG43, which I always thought was a bit of a troll there. MG42, MG43. It's not 1943 or 2043. So this is a bit like the FN, who had the Minimi, developed that into a 7.62 version, still called Minimi, even though that implies small machine gun. And now that's the trend. So modern machine guns are developed and then derived from each other, or developed in parallel to be small receiver, large receiver. It's not quite clear at the moment where the next generation of military machine guns is going to land on caliber. So a lot of companies are staying flexible on that. There's a lot to be said if you're going to go for a relatively heavy machine gun, to go for a next category up with a 338 Norma or something. You can use it for things that are 50 cal. Might be used for actual anti-materiel type work. Probably not, but long range with significant thermal effect, yes, more so than 7.62.
Weirdly, in Breakpoint, the belts on the LMGs don't move, which is especially odd because so much of this game has like an aura of authenticity about it when it comes to the firearms and tactical nature, but then something as quite basic as a belt moving is not implemented.
So basic that I didn't notice. I can't remember the last time I didn't see a machine gun belt move in a video game. They jiggle, they realistically jiggle like they're really there in the world, but they don't feed through the weapon. I'm so glad I never noticed that playing the game. That would have annoyed the heck out of me.
Oh no! God damn it! We're under attack!
Oh wow, it's a phased plasma rifle in the 40-watt range. Not really, but it is the Valmet rifle that was based on. To my eternal despair, we don't have this bullpup Valmet. For those of you who don't know what the hell I'm rambling about, this was the main Rebel plasma rifle in the Terminator movies with a great big thermal type optic on top and short magazine and implied and some greebly stuck to it. And it's a plasma rifle in the movies. Now, in the otherwise excellent Terminator Resistance game, they got this gun wrong, which really annoyed me. They put a magazine in front of power pack, whatever, in front of the trigger group and not behind. And I don't know why they did that. So ironically here, we've got it correctly represented, but it doesn't make any sense as to why these would be here.
Well, funnily enough, your love of pop culture and great movies has gotten ahead of yourself. This gun was added because there was a Terminator crossover event in Breakpoint.
Yes, I was playing the game when that happened. I ought to know this, although I don't remember ever having the Valmet in that. But I remember taking out Terminators and going down into the factory and blowing that up or whatever. So yeah, we had a Predator event for Wildlands and a Terminator one for Breakpoint. A nice nod, because obviously it's not the plasma rifle from the future. But like the Valmet was an excellent rifle. Bullpupping it, not really sure that was a good idea. And it's not aesthetically pleasing either. It has that sci-fi cool when it's done up as a plasma rifle. But hey, I applaud their very strong nerd reference by including the real world version of that pop culture gun as part of their DLC. It has a certain Cold War cool to it, I think, without the plasma gubbins, but it's not a pretty weapon.
That shit crashes. I saw blue.
Oh God, no, I remember this.
Yeah, this is the other end of the Terminator tie-in spectrum of weaponry.
Yeah, so I don't know if you're trying to catch me with a cursed gun, but I already know about it because I think you pretty much had to use it in the Terminator event.
I was trying to catch you with a cursed gun, dang it.
Well, my memory has saved me there. I don't know, story-wise, I thought it was quite cool because it was the idea that we somehow got the blueprints from the plasma rifles of the future and we're going to somehow apply that to an M14 and make it kill T-800s. Because if I remember rightly, the ordinary bullet weapons were not that great, whereas this thing would actually do them some damage. And part of me does like the mashup of current and future tech thing, like the Elysium AK with the special programmable rounds, although that makes maybe more sense than turning an M14 into an energy weapon. It's like trying to strap a jet engine to a bicycle. You're trying to convert one type of technology into something totally different and expecting it to do the same thing at a much higher level. Please don't go strapping jet engines onto any bicycle. If Colin Furs is watching.
I was just about to say, I'm pretty sure Colin Furs has beat you to that.
Do you know what? I think he probably has. Yeah.
Jetpack!
And there's no point warning him, even if he hasn't, because he'll still do it. I mean, I can't say that any other weapon is a better donor for a plasma system than an M14, but... Oh, wow. Okay, that looks like a Mossberg 500 with a breaching muzzle, bird's head pistol grip, and a karambit knife inexplicably taped to the grip. Is that so you can turn it around and hit people with it?
I guess that's the intent, but you can't actually do that in the game. The main reason I wanted to include a shotgun is because they're very effective against the small drones that come at you. I know people have theorized that the use of shotguns as like an anti-drone weapon now.
I have in fact fired an anti-drone shotgun that's shooting a net. That was an interesting experience. Not as a drone, unfortunately. But yeah, shotguns are being used against drones. Maybe not on the scale you might think. I haven't seen any good data on how effective they are. In theory, they'd be very effective. In practice, you're lugging around a whole extra weapon for an unproven, I suppose, benefit. And the net firing guns are very specific. You know, they'd be for police to take down a drone that was causing some problem, or maybe it was weaponized by terrorists who might use that. Just a conventional shotgun shooting birdshot might be the best way to damage enough of a drone to drop it out of the sky. Maybe a better way forward would be some, calibrate some sort of optical sight mode for letting you use your service rifle in a more effective way against drones. Might be that this is where short control bursts or actual mechanical burst fire, dare I say, even though that's gone away again, could be useful to give you that spread of shot effectively to actually hit the drone as it's dancing around the sky. That's the other problem, is birds and clays fly in a predictable path and you can leave the target and hit them. Drones, if the operator sees what you're doing, or even if he's just maneuvering to try and hit somebody, it's going to be a lot harder to actually hit them with it. So I'd be very interested in any feedback from anyone who's been in a combat zone or is there now on the utility of shotguns against drones. This thing is a bit nuts. I still like the hand change mechanic in this game, by the way, that we saw with the gun there. It's not going to work properly with this gun, though, because you don't have the buttstock to support the weapon in the shoulder when you swap hands. So you try and swap hands like that, and you're probably going to drop the thing. And or slice your hand open on the carambit underneath. That's a very silly place to put something sharp. Thank you for watching, guys. Those were the guns of Ghost Recon Breakpoint, which I did sink quite a few hours into a few years ago. I know I say this a lot, but we do appreciate all the traffic we can get over at the Royal Armouries, whether that's in person. We do still have our Reloaded exhibition of decorated firearms on display until the end of June. We have our Fort Nelson Artillery Museum on the south coast. And if you come to visit London, go to the Tower of London. Everything in that central keep is ours, all the weapons and armor at least. But regardless, I will be here again next week with another Expert Reacts.